life cycle. The product life cycle. So this is the product life cycle. Introduction. So there's 4 stages in the product life cycle according to this model. Introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. Right, Kimberly? Now I'm going to tell you something that's not in the book. I tell you a lot of things that aren't in the book, in case you didn't notice. I know students say, what page is that on? It's not on any page in the book. Obsolescence. And this, what's that? You say, Coach, I've never seen that before. Yes, revitalization. Introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. For the purpose of the exam, introduction, growth, maturity, and decline is what you need to know. But for your success as a marketer, you need to understand that at some point the product might reach obsolescence, like 8-track players. I don't think that's going to have any revitalization. Or what about VHS players? Do you think it's reached obsolescence yet? Kind of, sort of. Betamax. Is every product going to follow this model precisely? No. But what's important for us as marketers to take away is that directionally, a product is going to follow this life cycle.
Watch it. That pretty much became somewhat obsolete because of cell phones are slowly coming back.
Oh, there's a lot of products that have become obsolete. As marketers, what we need to do, our challenge is to manage this life cycle. So this is the product life cycle. So knowing that a product is going to follow this life cycle, we need to work hard to keep growth, to keep sales growing. We should anticipate that it's going to reach a level of maturity, which means what? That over time, that sales are no longer increasing. We want to prevent that from happening. So we need to continue to introduce what? Line extensions, for example. Advertising. Spend more on advertising, etc. So again, our challenge is to manage the product life cycle. It's not interesting, can't be just interesting. We know that the life cycle of a product is going to follow this pattern according to this model, which is tremendously insightful. We need to do something about it. We know that it's going to reach a point where sales are going to plateau. Sales are going to stop increasing. We want to keep that from happening, right? And importantly, keep sales from declining. We may need to cannibalize our own sales, which means that, you know what? Introducing a DVD player is going to dramatically reduce our sales of VHS players, but we have to do that. Because if Sony doesn't do it, another company will. So introducing DVD players may not result in incremental sales. In fact, it may cannibalize our sales, but we need to be preemptive in cannibalizing our own sales.
Is that what Polaroid failed to do? It sounds like integrating technology.
What was that?
Isn't that what Polaroid failed to do?
Polaroid, exactly. Yes, so camera manufacturers were slow. Kodak, for example, also was slow to adopt digital photography. Very good example. Brand hierarchy. So in a brand hierarchy, there are 3 levels: a corporate brand, master brands, and sub-brands. So right now we're talking about a brand hierarchy. And what I'm saying is that there's 3 levels. So there's going to be a corporate brand. Sometimes we refer to that as a family brand. A master brand and a sub-brand. So a good example would be of a corporate brand, might be Toyota, Toyota Motor Sales, and in their portfolio they have a number of master brands. Well, the master brands are Scion, Toyota,
Oh, Lexus.
and Lexus. And Toyota has numerous sub-brands. Shanae said Camry, Corolla, Echo, Solara, so this is an example of a brand hierarchy. So for this company, Toyota Motor Sales USA, that's their corporate brand. In their portfolio, they have several master brands: Scion, Toyota, and Lexus. An example of sub-brands is when you associate the master brand, in this case, with another brand in your portfolio to help facilitate the adoption of that product. So Toyota Camry, that's the way the product is marketed. Toyota Corolla. So if we just introduced a product, a new car called Corolla, it definitely would not sell nearly as well as if the product was branded Toyota Corolla. Toyota is the master brand, and it's associated, well, what we do actually is we associate sub-brands with that master brand. Because what we do is we leverage the equity in that master brand.
Brand extension?
We didn't get to that yet. Well, we talked about that, but we're gonna get there. So now, you want to look at another example? What would be another example? Let's take another example of a brand hierarchy would be, which one? Marriott. Marriott, yeah. That's good. Connie, you have a good memory.
Yep.
You want to do Marriott?
No, I was just throwing that in there. I didn't remember where they're gonna.
All right, we're good. So this is a good example. Toyota Motor Sales. That's the corporate brand. These are their master brands in the U.S. And these are examples of sub-brands. You see why that's considered to be a sub-brand? We associate these brands with Toyota. So there's a relationship between the master brand and the sub-brand. To introduce a new brand in the short term, we're talking about spending $50 to $100 million. In the intermediate term, you're talking about spending $500 million. If you want to be a power brand, you want to have that kind of brand recognition and brand recall that Coke has, for example. So that being said, you want to be able to leverage the equity in Toyota. Because you're not going to spend, you can't spend $100 million to develop each one of these brands. Then we're just basically developing a new master brand, which is what they did. Right? They introduced this new master brand, Lexus. They introduced Scion. We're going to talk about that in terms of brand growth strategies. So let's look at branding strategies. So we talked about Sony. Remember we talked about Sony? Sony is an example of what type of branding? So think about the different types of branding strategies. What do you think? Is it multi-product or multi-branding?
Multi-branding.
So Sony, you want to vote? How many say multi-product? How many say multi-product? Two people again. How many say multi-branding?
Oh wait, I don't know.
How many don't want to vote? Raise your hand. Murphy doesn't want to vote. All right, so Sony. This is the thing with Sony. We said that if we define their business as an electronics company, we would be accurate. So they don't just make televisions. They make televisions, MP3 players, laptops, and the list goes on and on. Electronics. They're an electronics company. Interestingly, all their products are branded Sony. That's a strategic decision. So that would be an example of multi-product branding.
Product branding.
So not multi-branding, but multi-product branding. All their products, whether they're TVs, MP3 players, laptops, all of them are branded Sony. And they use sub-brands as well, like they have for their laptops. So the Sony Vaio, for example. This multi-product is sometimes known as family branding or corporate branding. Basically, all the products, whether they're electronics or otherwise, in these different categories, because MP3 players are one category, DVD players is another category, TVs is another category, computers is still another category. So they've extended their brand into these different categories. So it's a good example of a brand extension. They've extended the Sony brand into MP3 players, DVD players, TVs. And so they leverage the Sony brand. That's an example of a brand extension on the part of Sony. We would describe their branding strategy as multi-product. All the products have the same brand. Are we good? Questions? That makes sense, right? Now, not every company has adopted that branding strategy. Take for example, P&G. P&G, Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble is a very successful company. They have a different strategy. For each of their products, they have a different master brand. So, of course, their corporate brand is Procter & Gamble. But they did something very different than what Sony did. Sony, we said, branded all their products Sony. Procter & Gamble did something different. They created brands for each of their products. So, for example, some of their master brands are Tide, so these are some examples of their master brands. All of them in their portfolio are considered to be power brands. Tide, Scope, Charmin, Crest. Those are master brands. That's an example of multi-branding. So they're competing in the toothpaste category, the mouthwash category, the laundry detergent category, and a lot of other categories. For each product that they have competing, they have a distinct brand, a distinct master brand. So they didn't label everything Procter & Gamble. Everything is not branded Procter & Gamble. Each product has its own brand name, its own master brand. Another branding strategy is private branding, private label branding. So we've all seen this in retail. You ever go into Walgreens, for example, and walk down their aisles, and you see they have Walgreens mouthwash, Walgreens laundry detergent. Walgreens doesn't manufacture laundry detergent, in case anybody was wondering. They don't manufacture mouthwash, they don't manufacture antibiotic ointment. Those are examples of private label. Companies manufacture their products for them, and they put the retailer's brand on the product. Whirlpool, for example, is known for selling their appliances like washing machines and dishwashers to Sears under the Kenmore brand name. So the washing machines that you see at Sears that are branded Kenmore, those are made by Whirlpool.
Is it possible, for instance, Walgreens and Rite Aid to purchase from the same manufacturer? And like have their brands on the same parts? They're different.
It's possible. Yes, it's definitely possible. Now, some companies pride themselves by saying that they don't sell private label products. What is the issue there? What is it that they think consumers might suspect, Luis?
Transparency of the company, sort of the consistency, sort of seeing that the company really creates its products and they stand behind the products.
Yeah, so there's a question of authenticity. Merlin, you want to add something?
Perception of the company.
The perception of the company and the quality of the products. So people have a concern that the product, like let's say Scope, for example, that in the same factory where they make Scope, they also make mouthwash for Walgreens. So isn't the whole premise behind their marketing that they're able to charge more for their product, Procter & Gamble, their Scope mouthwash, they're able to charge more because their product is of a higher quality. And so aren't consumers concerned that, well, wait a minute, now you're telling me that we could buy it for less, but it's branded Walgreens? Is it really the same product, or is it something different?
It's the same. If you look at the ingredients and stuff, it's the same.
Yeah, so the thing is that very often it's not the same formula, and so in order to be able to hit that private label price point, so it's going to be at a lower price point than the branded product, the national brand name product like Scope or Crest or Tide. It's going to be less expensive. Well, the way that they're able to do that is because they lessen the quality.
Yeah, it's like
What-
buying like dish detergent. Not all of them are the same.
Right.
If they do very good, the higher the price, usually that's the best one.
So those are some examples of branding strategies. Let's talk about the growth strategies. All right, are we good? We're making progress. Here we go. We're still going. Like the Energizer Bunny, right? All right, so let's revisit these brand growth strategies. So a line extension, we said that an example of a line extension would be introducing the product in a new flavor. So it's an existing product in an existing product class, right? So it's in the same product class, so we're still selling soup, and it's an existing brand. So in this case, we said, we're going to introduce the soup in different flavors. Different flavor soup. Each time we introduce a new flavor of Campbell's soup is an example of a line extension. So we could change the flavor of a product, the form of the product, the color, the size. So maybe we're selling it in 6 ounce, now we're selling it in 8 ounce and 12 ounce and 16 ounce. We're just extending the line. We haven't introduced a truly new product. We're just extending the line. Same category, same brand. But then we made a distinction. We said, okay, well, that's a way to achieve some of our goals if we're going to want to increase sales and increase the profitability of the company and increase our market share, as well to introduce some line extensions. Expand the line, introduce new flavors. Ideally, it's going to be incremental. That's one of the things. So, when we do this research, we have to use that research to get distribution at retail. So when we say, oh, we're going to introduce mango, so it's one thing to have a sales meeting and introduce the new flavor. We need to actually then get Target to carry that new flavor. We then need to get Pathmark to carry that flavor. Kroger's to carry that flavor. Walmart to carry that flavor. How are we going to convince them? We need to show them the research. Because one of the things that they're going to tell us is that if they take up shelf space, everybody has a limited amount of shelf space. Even if you have a 200,000 square foot store, you have a limited number of spots on your planogram. So the planogram is the layout of the shelf, and every spot is accounted for. So if you have vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry on your planogram, and now you want to put mango, something has got to come off. Either your chocolate is going to come off, or somebody's Klondike bars are going to come off. So we need to convince the retailer that sales are going to be incremental. So not just from our perspective are we concerned about the incrementality, but our retail partners, the ones that are going to be selling our product, they're interested in the incrementality as well. They want to know. They're looking at shelf space productivity. Shelf space productivity is how much sales and profit is generated by a given amount of space. So if this is our shelf, we have 5 shelves. We have 5 shelves. What retailers look at is shelf space productivity. So this is our planogram. So we have our products. Every space is accounted for. Each of those are items. They want to know how much sales is this 4-foot section in their store going to generate. So let's say this 4-foot section is soup. So this 4-foot section is 5 shelves of soup. All different kinds of soup. Campbell's, Progresso, different flavors, different sizes, right? So all the line extensions. How much sales dollars and how much sales units? So how many units of soup are we going to sell from this 4-foot section? How much dollars is this section going to generate? How much margin is this section going to generate? So when they make a change and say, okay, I'm going to take this out, then what they're expecting is that over the next 12 months, that instead of selling 100,000 units, that now they're going to sell 120,000 units. That there's some incrementality. So we're in alignment with the retailers. That's what we want too. If they sell more, that means that we sell more. But they're going to ask that question about the incrementality, and they're concerned about the cannibalization. Of course, the first thing they're going to say is, oh, if I introduce mango, it means I'm going to sell less strawberry. I'm going to say, no, you're going to actually sell 10,000 cartons more of ice cream. So you're actually going to sell more cartons of ice cream in total than you did the prior year. That would be our argument. Presumably, we could support that with the research. All right, so that's shelf space productivity. That's not in the book, but very important, very important. See, it's not just interesting, it's not just academic. What I'm giving you is, from my experience in marketing, sharing with you some of the important aspects. That's extremely important. You have to sell the retailer. We're assuming, we're saying we're introducing these new products, line extensions and brand extensions, but what about getting distribution? And retailers are very concerned about that. Remember, shelf space productivity. All right. So those are line extensions. Brand extensions are going to be, take for example, Ivory. Is everybody familiar with the Ivory brand? Is a Procter & Gamble master brand. So there's Ivory bar soap. Of course, at my suggestion, they introduced Ivory shampoo. And they introduced Ivory laundry detergent. And they introduced Ivory dishwashing soap. So those are all different categories. What they did was introduce a series of brand extensions. They extended the Ivory brand from the bar soap category to the laundry detergent category to the dishwashing category to the shampoo category, all very distinct categories. But it would seem that they've done some brand elasticity research. Brand elasticity is how far you could stretch your brand. So it makes sense that they would extend the Ivory brand into other categories that have something in common, which is what? They're all related to cleaning. They're all related to soap. But what about if they introduced Ivory ice cream? Okay, let me rephrase. Ivory mango ice cream. Now you would buy it, right? So what research presumably would tell us is that the Ivory brand can't extend. It's not elastic enough to extend into the ice cream category. But from laundry detergent to dishwashing soap, yeah, that seems to be in line with their value proposition, the way they're positioned in the marketplace.
What does it have to do with like the elasticity? Like why is that? Because some brands can do that, can go into electronics and then put their name on all types of, like Procter & Gamble.
Well, so it depends on how you market your brand, how broad you've positioned yourself in the marketplace. Have you marketed yourself as a maker of TVs, or did you position yourself in the marketplace as an electronics company? And that gives you the ability to sell any type of electronics. And that in people's mind, they associate your brand with electronics, any type of electronics. So a new brand. So we could introduce a new brand. And that's what Toyota did. Toyota introduced a new brand into a new product category. What was the new product category? Luxury automotive. So their branding strategy, their growth strategy is, how are we going to grow our business? We want to sell more cars. Well, certainly they introduced a good number of line extensions, and they introduced brand extensions, and certainly they introduced new brands, new master brands, like Lexus. So a new brand in a new category. What's that new category? The new segment is luxury automotive. And also Zion. So Zion is a new brand that they introduced, a new master brand to penetrate the
More affordable.
the lower end of the market, the more affordable economy line of cars. And what about the flanker or fighting brand? So an example of that is a new brand into an existing product class. So think about Procter & Gamble in the dishwashing detergent category. So they have a good, better, best pricing strategy. What's best in dishwashing detergent is, for them, is Dawn. So this issue of cannibalization arises again. So they have the Dawn brand, which is their premium brand of dishwashing soap. Now, what they've done is they've recognized that there's competition in the market. There's competition for dishwashing soap that's not the best, but better, and also one that's not the best, but good. So they introduced, this is part of their brand portfolio, Joy, and Ivory. So that's an example of a flanker brand. Introducing Joy is a flanker brand. So they realize that they need to introduce a new brand that can preempt competitors cannibalizing their sales. So they introduce a new brand into an existing category. So that's different from what we were talking about in terms of introducing shampoo and dishwashing soap and laundry detergent. Those are all different categories. This is in the same category. A new brand into an existing category. They already market Dawn in that category. So what do? They introduce this fighting brand, this flanker brand, to penetrate within the existing category. They introduce Joy. And they also introduce Ivory. Those are good examples of a flanker brand. So they're preempting cannibalization. So they have 3 brands in one category. So they have a good, better, best pricing strategy. How do they make that real? Well, they have 3 brands. It's not enough to say, oh, we have a good, better, best pricing strategy. Well, what does that mean? You can't have the same brand. You can't be all things to all people. You can't sell Dawn 12 ounce at $1.99 and $1.59 and $1.09. So if you want to have a good, better, best pricing strategy where you have $1.99, $1.49, and let's say 99, good, better, best for the same size, so the same quantity of product, then you need to have 3 distinct brands. Isn't that what Toyota also realized? They said, Coach, we got it. Yes. We need to have 3 different master brands. Everything can't be branded Toyota. Because they did that brand elasticity research also. And they found out that people weren't willing to spend $95,000 for a Toyota. They said, Toyota is great. They're a great mid-sized car option. And we'd spend $55,000 and $60,000 for a Toyota Great cars, very reliable, dependable, fuel efficient. But if I'm gonna spend $95,000, it's not gonna be on a Toyota. This is what they said in the research. They said, I also heard Coach talk about Mercedes-Benz. I was there for that lecture, and I know all about that. So, I have other options. So they said, okay, they realized that, yes, they need to introduce a new brand, a new master brand that they could use to market their luxury line of automobiles.